I want to ask you, Teresa Payton. It is asserted that some combination of the Russians, the Chinese, maybe others, are seeing the phone activity of our cabinet members in real time. Is that definitely true? Definitely not true? Maybe true.
May be true. We did have testimony by the outgoing Biden administration that 8 to 9 US telecommunications companies, as well as international, had been invaded by the PRC, People Republics of China Assault Typhoon. China, for the record, denies it, so I have to, kind of give that disclaimer. But basically saying that it was a very intrusive invasion into our telecommunications, that people were targeted. In some cases, they could see text messages, phone contacts, phone records. Now, we never got an update saying they're out now, we're all clear. The telco company's been working on it. The outgoing administration said it was going to be very complex. So, text messaging in and of itself, for all of us, not just the administration, is incredibly insecure right now. Signal is a better thing to do
For
than
sure.
just plain texting for unclassified. But here's the thing. If you store your Signal chats on your laptop, on your desktop, they could, if those devices are compromised and you're storing those chats there, they could potentially be at risk.
Right. All right. Great conversation. I want to talk about Doge, but I'm also mindful of the time. So I'm going to bring people in. As always, tell us where you are, if you would, unless you're in the witness relocation program and you don't want to, and what's on your mind for this great group. And we'll start with either Kelly. Welcome in, Kelly Jordan. Thanks for
Hi.
joining.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Mark. I've been watching for a while, but this is my first time calling in.
Thank you for
Um,
doing that.
and it's in response. There's been a few things I've wanted to call in, but it was actually in response to the your guest comments on JD Vance. So I was thinking about it, and I watched his Munich speech. I guess my question to them would be: they're our allies, right? But why are they our allies? Because we have joint like values, right? JD Vance talks about the First Amendment. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I didn't expect to be
That's okay.
nervous.
Don't, no reason to be nervous. Everyone, at the possible exception of Bacha here, is very friendly.
Okay, so I guess my question, like when I watched JD Vance's speech, and I agree with your take, Mark, and then I heard the guest, who I actually have a lot of respect for, kind of like poo-pooing, like, oh, I felt like they were acting in a way similar to the way the Europeans act. And JD Vance he's saying like, hey, if we're going to defend you and protect you, let's at least make sure we have these values in common.
Yeah. Kelly, I couldn't agree more, and no reason for you to be nervous. That was well said. Bacha, you first, and you are very friendly. I was just kidding. Um, just, do you want to revise and extend? Because Kelly and I think JD Vance is trying to help Europe, not divide us.
I think that we're in a moment of reevaluating, what our interests are. They really expanded and expanded and expanded under successive Democratic leadership. And I think there was this view that, we have just endless resources. We're the richest country on earth. We should be able to share our resources with anybody who needs anything. And that sort of in the last administration included, basically decriminalizing illegal border crossing. So we had this open border and the kind of free flow of goods and of labor and then of American taxpayer dollars into all of these other countries and into programs like NATO, which we're just not under threat from Russia. I mean, the idea that Russia would wage war on us to me, seems just ridiculous. So we're basically doing that to help somebody else. Now, I think what we're doing right now is we're in a moment of retrenchment to where that largesse came very much at the expense of our less fortunate neighbors of the American working class, who were asked to bear the burden of the world's problems. And instead of getting anything in exchange for it, they got contempt from American elites, from the international community, and basically, this sort of downward mobility of the American working class. And so we're now in this moment of reevaluating, like to me, it seems like there's something godless about, offering to help so many other people when your own neighbors can't afford the American dream. And, people will say, well, they can afford a lot more than, that child in Zambia who was benefiting from this or that program. It's like, sure. But that's not the standard. It's, can they afford the same amount as the people setting the policy for America, the person hiring them to be their cleaning lady? Like, so to me, there's like this reevaluation is very much about like a kind of fairness, kind of like that we've lost this sense that we owe something to our fellow Americans because we had this largesse. And I think that's what Trump is reevaluating with this kind of three-pronged approach to foreign policy. And I agree with you. Like, I wonder how far it will go. But the idea that, like, I think the First Amendment is a really good example. Like what JD, I think, was trying to point out is like, actually, is that even a value that we share with Europe anymore?
Yeah.
They seem very interested in it. Great comment, Kelly. Thank you so much for coming on.
Adam or Teresa, do you guys want to comment?
I mean, I guess I really quickly just want to say I'm on the left, and I think I'm a liberal. I think a lot of Trump voters overestimate how much other countries are taking advantage of us. Yes, Europe should pitch in more, absolutely, for sure. But I feel like every time I speak to a Trump voter, they think every other country is screwing the U.S. over when we're not. And JD Vance seems to be slightly more hostile towards Europe and European countries than Trump does. And maybe it's just because we got to see his inside text messages. But yeah, I don't know. It just kind of
Adam,
reminds. Yeah, what's up?
Can I just challenge you on one thing? More hostile. I guess I would say, so there's the expectation that you're in NATO, you're a partner, you're going to commit X amount of funds, blah, blah, blah. Is he being more hostile, or is he holding them to account, which is something maybe we haven't been seeing from both parties for decades?
I think it's a thin line. I think what Trump is doing is holding them to account, but he's kind of doing it in an abrasive way, right? The way they treated Zelensky in the Oval Office, and you can have the argument about Zelensky's clothing or whatever, but I do think they were ganging up on Zelensky. And not to sidestep your question, but it reminds me of this Zelensky line that he said when he was like, he said something to the effect of, Russia, there's an ocean separating you, but Russia still affects you. This war still affects you. And it reminded me of what Boccia just said when she said Russia would never wage war on the US. And I think they absolutely would. Not like maybe a ground war, but in many different ways, Russia's trying to destabilize the US with disinformation. And yeah, what's up, Kelly?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I appreciate your opinion. I guess I would just say, I feel like there's this constant back and forth. Like, we can't have it both ways. Russia can't be such a threat that, we need to, like, such a threat that they're coming after America and blah, blah, blah. But then they also can't even beat Ukraine, right? Like, I guess my point was, I don't want to take up too much time or get sidetracked, but my point was, like, I feel like JD Vance is sticking up for that in a blunt way. And I don't know, maybe he's the bad cop to Trump's good cop, which, interesting take there. But I would just say I really appreciated JD Vance. JD Vance is just his kind of directness. And like what Bacha was saying, yes, I feel like Americans, our neighbors, have struggled as a consequence to these major international events that really are driven often by the elite that, they're not hitting everyday Americans. When you can't go to the store, I work in a school, there's kids that can't read. I mean, we have some real problems here. And I guess I would just wrap it up by saying, I appreciate the way JD Vance and Donald Trump, but are sticking up for, the Americans here. And I just,
Kelly,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you for being part of Two Way and for coming on tonight. You did
All right.
great.